When you're playing Dark Souls, what are some things that are on your mind? You're probably thinking about your HP, how many Estus you have, your stamina bar, Darks on Gwendolyn, normal stuff. But you probably aren't thinking about how many times you've attacked enemies throughout the game. I'd assume the average player presses that R1 button hundreds, maybe thousands of times in a given playthrough. All of this got me thinking, how many attacks do you need to beat Dark Souls? Like, numerically speaking, how many times do you have to attack enemies to finish the game? Some of my more astute viewers may be raising their hands at this very moment, calling out to their screens, "Zero, Becky! You can beat the game without attacking anything. I saw it on YouTube." And from a certain point of view, they'd be correct. With a clever combination of summoning NPCs and pulling out every skip and exploit in the book, you can indeed beat the entire game as a full-on pacifist by letting those NPCs handle the wet work as you sit back and watch, drumming your fingers together like the mastermind you are. However, those summoned warriors will have to swing their dinky weapons countless times to vanquish your foes, and that's just not good enough for me. Today, I want to figure out the lowest number of attacks that you, and you alone, need to beat Dark Souls Remastered. For the purposes of this run, an attack constitutes any action that directly damages an enemy. Weapon swings, magic missiles, fire bombs, shoving enemies off of cliffs, all count as attacks. I'm also counting any attacks performed by summoned allies, which is my way of saying that I'm not going to be summoning anyone for this run. I'm still allowed to use buff spells, harmlessly kick people, and lead enemies into dangerous situations by simply baiting them with my presence. If a hollow walks into a trap just because I'm standing on the other side of it, then that's his problem. Also, I'm going to be making big use of glitches and exploits, as well as backup save files, because I thought it would be much more interesting to test the physical limits of the game rather than playing as intended. One last thing, if I perform an attack in a boss fight and then die or quit out, I'm not counting it, since my progress gets reset anyway whenever that happens, and we're looking for a hypothetical perfect run. I've done quite a bit of experimenting and preparation for this run, and I'm pretty confident that I've got it figured out, so let's get into it. I chose Pyromancer for my starting class because this is the easiest way to get your hands on a pyromancy flame without killing any enemies, and we're gonna need one. I take the Master Key as my starting gift, name myself an educated guess, and wake up in the drunk tank with nothing but the keys to my cell. As established in my Lion Claw only run, go watch it, it's really good, it's possible to escape the Asylum without laying your hands on anyone, so that's what we're gonna do. I received some comments on that last video telling me I should have used the Black Firebomb trick to get past the Asylum demon, since it's way easier than clipping through the wall, but that felt like breaking the rules in a challenge where I'm locked to only one weapon. I obviously couldn't do it here either, since throwing unnecessary firebombs would count as attacks, so I decided to do it my way again. I'm glad I did too, because I changed up my game plan and made it a bit easier to pull off. Without further ado, I present the new and improved official Yezbektasor guide for escaping the Asylum in Dark Souls Remastered without attacking anything. Play through the Asylum normally, juking around all the hollows in your way until you get the Estus Flask. Then, quit out and reload. Now, run up to the fog gate to aggro the 3 sword hollows, then kite them back down the stairs and over to the demon door. Normally this door is locked, but because we quit and reloaded after talking to Oscar, it'll open anyway. Don't ask why. Lead the hollows inside and let the Asylum demon smash them to death, then exit the room. You'll want to make a backup save file here because as far as I know, that door glitch only triggers once per playthrough, and dying will respawn those hollows and force you to start all over. Trust me, I had to reset this run like 4 times because I kept screwing up. At this point, you're free to attempt the escape glitch, but that bow hollow is still pissing me off, so we'll get rid of him too. Bully him over to the fog gate, enter, and just wait. Soon enough, the Asylum demon will try to swat you down, and if you're lucky, the hitbox of its hammer will clip through the fog wall and defeat your loathsome foe. Theoretically, you could kill all 4 hollows like this and skip doing the door glitch, but they tend to shuffle around a lot behind that fog wall, and I was never able to get them all killed at one time. One more quit and reload, and finally we have peace and quiet to attempt the escape glitch as much as we like. I'd advise you to make another backup save file here, since failing this trick can get you trapped in limbo and force a reset. To perform this skip, drop any item on the right side of the fog gate, angle your camera just like this, tap W on your keyboard to turn your character without taking a step forward, and press A on the controller and E on the keyboard at the same time. If done correctly, you'll phase into the wall and start sliding upwards. Wait a few seconds to get the proper height, and a running jump will fling you to freedom. I was able to complete this process in a mere 15 minutes, a huge improvement on my previous time, and moved on to Greater Lordran. Now that we're free to start the real game, I can discuss my plan of action in further detail. Essentially, this run is predicated on 2 big questions. 1, how many bosses can I just skip outright? And 2, how can I best maximize my damage to make sure the mandatory bosses take as few hits as possible? The first question is pretty easy to answer, spoiler alert for this run, but I only plan on fighting 4 bosses out of the 26 total. The second question is where things get a little complicated. Obviously, there has to be one attack in the game that does the most damage, and that attack is... a character with 99 strength and 99 intelligence wearing the Crown of Dust, Bellowing Dragoncrest ring, and Red Tearstone ring while at less than 20% health, using the power within Pyromancy, then wielding the Manus Catalyst to cast the spell Dark Bead. That's more than enough damage to turn almost every enemy in the game into a nuclear shadow on the ground. However, most of this powerful equipment and sorcery can only be acquired after battling a plethora of enemies and bosses. As such, I need to find just the right balance between becoming as strong as possible while also doing as little fighting as I can get away with. First, we need to consider everything available to us that doesn't require combat to access. We're mainly looking for three things: souls, damage boosting items, and spells, since magic in Dark Souls 1 tends to have way higher damage potential than weapons. I snagged some free items from Firelink, having a bit of a dementia moment with the Homeward Bones. Which one they're in? Is it this one? No. But I get a free talisman there, so that's nice. Is it... No. This one is not even it either. It's the Lord Talisman. Fuck. Then began the ever-familiar descent down to Blighttown to start my gathering. I grabbed a dragon scale as a contingency for later and collected all the fattest souls I could find. I quickly learned that Blighttown is somehow even more annoying to navigate when you can't kill these dumbass spiders, but managed to get my hands on Power Within before getting impaled. All according to plan. My death returned me to Firelink and I set off for Taurus Demon, but a sword to my back reminded me that I actually meant to go the other way to Undead Parish. Thanks, buddy. I took the route through the Valley of the Knot Drakes, grabbing another juicy soul and the obligatory Grass Crest shield. I tried for a bit to get the Black Knight to take a dive off of the cliff, but he started crip walking on me, so I let him live. This time. Soon I heard the familiar frequencies of Andre's hammer hailing my arrival, but it wasn't time to talk to him just yet. I went backwards through Undead Parish to grab the Firekeeper soul and the basement key, once again forgetting that the gate would be closed and getting gored by the big pig. Back at Uncle Andre's, I popped a couple of souls and spent it all in one place, buying out his entire stock of wooden arrows. It was time for the next big glitch of the run, item duping. It took me a while to remember how to do this because I was too stubborn to look up a tutorial, but here's the gist of it. Place the item you want to dupe, in this case it'll be a soul, in the second slot of your inventory. Go to your arrows, press drop, scroll over to 999, then go back without actually dropping them. Now go to the options tab, hover over brightness, and press A and right bumper at the same time. If done correctly, the brightness menu will appear overlapping your inventory screen. Press down and then A to confirm, then use the mouse to hover over quit game. Press A, specify a quantity of 999, and hit OK. This will cause the game to use 999 of that second item in your inventory, granting you essentially unlimited souls, humanity, or whatever else you can use without a yes or no prompt. Just like that, I've got nearly 200,000 souls at soul level 1 without having attacked a single enemy. I used my counterfeit wealth to level up my intelligence to the soft cap of 50 and my faith to 12. I then did the same dupe on the soul of a big proud boy, netting me nearly 3 million souls. So 999 of them. Ooh, that's where it is. What the fuck kind of catchphrase is that? That's where it is. I got myself to 50 Vitality, 23 Attunement, 25 Dexterity, and 15 Endurance. I could have kept going, but I'll leave it at that for now. With my health bar now stretching across half the screen, plus the massive defense conferred from being level 116, I felt confident that no weapon fashion against me would prosper, and maneuvering around enemies became much less stressful. Back on the path to Taurus Demon, I bought the Residence Key and Bottomless Box from Yulia's dad, ignored the Feeble Hollow soldiers, and entered the Fog Gate. Taurus Demon is, of course, an optional boss fight, but you can actually beat him without attacking him by manipulating him into falling to his death. Now, when I did a test run of this challenge prior to recording, I was able to get him to do a flip off the ramparts within seconds of starting the battle. But this cow fucker was being so goddamn uncooperative this time that it ended up taking me like 10 minutes to get past him. Alright, jump back. What is wrong with you? I swear this is all I did last time was fucking run up to him and he fucking did it. Oh my god, you piece of shit. This was gonna be a cool gaming flex and you're ruining it. You're such a bitch for this, Taurus Demon. What the fuck is wrong with you, bruh? Come on, jump! What the fuck are you doing, bro? Oh my god, I hate you. I can't believe he hasn't done it once the entire... This is getting boring, dude. You're boring my fucking audience. The fact that he does it there makes me so actually fucking mad. You know what? I don't have to do this. I actually don't have to do this, and I don't give a fuck. But I do give a fuck is the problem. Please. Yes. Fall. Fall, please. No! Oh my god, he's fucking, like, stuck on the edge. No, he's regaining his fucking... God damn it! No, he just doesn't know what the fuck he cares. Yes, dude. Holy fucking god. I really didn't need to do any of that, but regardless, I opened the basement door and slid my way down to Lowerberg. The dogs were happy to see me, which was sweet, so I stood behind the fire to test their loyalty. Needless to say, they passed. I rescued the world's stupidest wizard, looted the corpse of who I can only assume was his twin brother whom he cannibalized to survive, and boned back to Firelink. I bought Fall Control for a later skip, Bellowing Dragoncrest Ring for boosted magic damage, and Great Heavy Soul Arrow, my first attacking spell. I also told some guy I'd go to church with him next week, and in exchange, he sold me a talisman as well as the Miracle's Force and Homeward. I then decided that being level 116 at the beginning of the game was a little pathetic. After failing the dupe glitch about 30 times in a row, I finally got it, cracked open another 3 million souls, and bumped my dexterity up to 45 and my endurance to 22. I returned to the Valley of someone other than Drake to grab the Red Ring of Death, and was shocked to find that Fall Control did not, in fact, control my fall. To the point where I just ended up, Oh, really? You gotta be fucking kidding me. Come on, Fall Control from that? Fuck's sake, I feel like an idiot. But no matter. It was time for the first mandatory boss of the run, Chaos Witch Quelaag. You've all seen how I've built my character thus far, so you're probably assuming that I'm going to use sorcery to defeat the sexy spider. But you see, it was all a ruse. The 50 intelligence, the Great Heavy Soul Arrow, the Bellowing Dragoncrest Ring, all of it a red herring to fool my incurious viewers into thinking I'd be using sorcery to take out my targets. You see, when I did my test run, I initially thought the most efficient way to kill Quelaag was to max out my damage as best as I could and two-shot her with a couple of Great Heavies to the dome, which was the main reason why I leveled intelligence so much. But in the midst of this official run, I learned that you do not, in fact, have to face Quelaag at all. Thus began the harrowing, hellish journey of the Quelaag skip in Dark Souls Remastered. The Quelaag skip revolves around a notable Dark Souls glitch known as Death Cam. When your character falls from a lethal height in this game, the camera automatically goes into Death Cam position, pointing straight down at your character. When it does, some weird things happen, including many objects and obstacles deloading from the world. Normally, this is inconsequential, since by the time you're seeing the Death Cam, it's already too late. However, there are certain spots throughout Lordran where you can trigger the Death Cam without actually being in a state of imminent doom. This is actually useful in certain areas due to the fact that Death Cam will remove the collision from fog gates and other walls, granting you access to areas you shouldn't be in. It's most commonly used to enter Sen's Fortress without ringing the bells of awakening, but here, it can actually be used to skip Quelaag's boss fight entirely. I think I can pretty confidently say that this is the worst thing I've ever had to do in all of my hundreds of hours playing this game. I'll go ahead and walk you through the process. The first step is to reach this specific spot in Blighttown, an especially obnoxious task when you're banned from bug stomping. Next, inch forward until you see the Death Cam activate. Note that as soon as this happens, the camera is permanently locked into this position until death, and the controls become absolutely fucked. I have no idea how or why this happens, but just know that movement in Death Cam is almost impossible on controller, and the only way to reasonably steer your character is with WASD, which essentially works like tank controls. Your character will also now ricochet off of any walls they hit for some ungodly reason. Anyway, the next step is to get from this spot all the way over to Quelaag's domain, taking care not to die from poison, enemies, or gravity along the way. This is the reason I bought Fall Control. The idea here is that because Death Cam has blown away the fog walls around Quelaag's arena, our intrepid 5-ish should be able to just waltz right on through, ignoring the spiderette entirely on her way to the Bell of Awakening. At first, it doesn't seem all that bad. I pass through Blighttown and make it to the spiderwebs, but something starts to happen. I can't really see where I'm going since the camera is high above this underground tunnel that I'm in, and I soon find myself lost in a deep, gray void. I can't see the floor, the walls, or even 5-ish. All I get are some volleys of molten lava and the clouds of dust kicked up from my dodge rolls. I think now would be a good time to point out that there are very few tutorials on this whole process, and I was essentially winging it the whole time. Hell, the only video I could find on YouTube of someone doing this in Dark Souls Remastered was a commentary-free clip where the dude runs through this purgatory for a solid 90 seconds, giving no indication of what directions he's pressing, before suddenly quitting out and reloading on the other side of Quelaag's fight. Not only did I not know how to navigate this section, but I also had no way of telling if I was doing it correctly, which is really the most evil part of this skip. See, there are only two ways to exit Death Cam. You either die or quit and reload the game. The problem is, if you quit and reload too close to Quelaag's arena, you'll spawn at the front of it rather than behind it, and since there's no visual indication of having made it to the right spot, you won't know if you've done it correctly until you quit and reload. And if you messed up, you have to go all the way back to that ledge to get your Death Cam back and try again. It's also important to note that you don't just have to make it past that back fog wall, but also through a corridor and halfway up a staircase in order to reach the end zone. Even with a backup save right at the death cam spot, this was absolute torture. I threw myself at it again and again, making an imperceptible amount of progress, if any, and randomly experiencing glitches that further weakened my resolve. I tried clipping through the fog wall. Nope. I tried finding glitchy spots in the topography of her arena. Nope. Sometimes I died to her lava puddles. Sometimes I died to normal enemies. Sometimes I died to a sudden heart attack. But the worst feeling of all was thinking that maybe, just maybe, I'd finally gone far enough past Quelaag, only to quit out and find that I was right back where I started. But eventually, by some miracle of God, I actually fucking made it. Oh! I did it!
Oh, you did the glitch?
I fucking did it!
Let's go!
Oh, that was the first time I tried it today. Holy
Dude.
shit. I was elated. I felt the weight of the world lift from my shoulders. The egg-riddled Engi stepped aside for me, clearly in awe of my supernatural gaming senses. I stepped into the presence of the fair lady and rested my weary bones at the warmth of her bonfire. I pledged myself to the Chaos Servants and duped up 99 humanity, then donated the bulk to my new girlfriend in exchange for Chaos Storm, the pyromancy that would pave my path to victory. My work in Blighttown was finally complete, and it was time to leave this horrible place once and for all. Except, I couldn't. In my jubilation, I had kinda sorta accidentally completely fucked myself. Because I skipped Quelaag, her fog walls were still up, and since you're not meant to get here without beating her, you can't enter through the back way, so I couldn't leave the way I came in. And because I just had to sit at that bonfire, I could no longer escape with a homeward bone either. I was trapped in the spider's web. The only way out was to reload my backup save file, which meant I had to do the whole fucking thing all over again. The optimist in me was thinking, hey, if I did it once, I can do it again. But the realist in me was quick to point out that I had no fucking idea how I did it the first time. At the very least, I now knew that it was truly possible, but I had to accept that my first victory was sheer luck. I needed a plan if I was gonna pull it off again. So I started thinking rationally. I'd learned from previous attempts that my bloodstain was one of the only things visible in that gray void, so I intentionally allowed Quelaag to kill me right up against the back fog wall. I now had a reference point for every future attempt, and combined with a map of Quelaag's domain that I found on a wiki, I figured I'd be able to navigate the void with ease. This definitely helped, but was far too imprecise to guarantee success. I needed a better map. So I did what anyone would do in this scenario. I went back through the footage I'd recorded and took 3 screenshots in the void at varying distances from the bloodstain. Since 5ish was always directly in the middle of the screen during deathcam, I marked a green dot in the middle of each screenshot, then overlaid them using the bloodstain as an anchor point. I then had to align my bloodstain with the threshold on the map, but it was a struggle figuring out how to scale and rotate it accurately. The quirkiness of deathcam actually helped me a lot here. The fact that it makes your character bounce off of walls instead of just running into them meant that I was able to discern what room I was in at a given time based on how 5ish ping-ponged around. I oriented the map accordingly, and finally, my schizophrenic reference image was complete. It might not have been perfect, and at first I didn't really think it was gonna work, but lo and behold, I wasted no time in creating a backup save in case I fucked up again somehow, then finally rang the first bell of awakening, still having yet to lay a finger on a single enemy. Again, I joined the Chaos Servants and donated some black market humanity to get Chaos Storm, but this time I was able to homeward bone back to safety. I then realized that I forgot to level up my Pyromancy Flame with Egg Boy, so I reloaded the save again, joined the Servants, got the Storm, and duped some souls to max out my cool red glove before leaving. I then remembered that I wanted to grab the gold hemmed armor set before I left, so I reloaded the save one last time, did all the bullshit again, then ran out to the Demon Ruins to steal some chick's clothes before leaving once and for all, for real, for the last time, I promise. I stopped by Quelaag on my way out to ascend my Pyromancy Flame to +5, used my remaining wealth to bump my endurance up to 38, and at last, my Blighttown adventures had come to an end. I now had a fully upgraded weapon, an arsenal of damage boosting equipment and spells, and the most powerful pyromancy in the game. It was finally time for 5ish to fight. I'll talk a bit about Chaos Storm as I ascend back up to Undead Parish. Remember when I gave that example earlier of the strongest attack in the game? That actually wasn't completely accurate. While Dark Bead is certainly the strongest sorcery, Chaos Storm actually does have the potential to outdamage it. Casting this pyromancy makes numerous columns of fire spout up randomly all around you, leaving behind pools of lava that linger for a while and deal extra damage. There's no way to aim this attack, making it likely that most of the flames will miss, but with many boss enemies being too big to dodge them and too stupid not to stand in the lava leftovers, you're looking at absolutely massive damage numbers. In short, 5ish is now a more or less unkillable tank wielding the most powerful attack in all of Lordran. Oh, and I'm not exactly sure why performing this spell fully uses exactly 17 casts, but just know that this is all from one press of the attack button, not 17 distinct attacks. Back at the parish, I prepared for my first true fight of the run, the Bell Gargoyles. Believe it or not, this was actually the most infuriating fight of this challenge. Not because it had any crazy glitches I needed to pull off, but because it didn't. With my current build, it'll be no problem to one-shot everything I come across. But the fight with the Gargoyles is set up in such a way that it's impossible to win the fight with a single attack, because in order to get the second gargoyle to spawn, you have to damage the first one down to at least half health. I expected to be able to circumvent this in some way, but as it turns out, this boss is 100% dairy-free because there are no cheese strats available. There's no way to clip out of bounds to skip around them or trick them into jumping off the roof, at least none that I could find. Initially, I thought I'd be able to use a Chaos Storm to kill the first gargoyle and have the lava puddles take out the second one when it lands, but the effect doesn't linger for long enough. Even when I got the perfect positioning, even when I literally saw the damage effect appear on the second goyle, he's immune to damage until his landing animation ends. I tried clipping through the wall and looking for death chem spots, but to no avail. I tried thinking of other attacks I could use that would allow me to hold down a button for continuous fire, but the only thing accessible to me without violence would be the breath attack from the dragon headstone, which wouldn't last nearly long enough to kill 2 gargoyles. I even went way out of my way to get my hands on a stone greatsword, along with the stats needed to wield it, because I remembered seeing a video one time where a guy glitched the spell to do crazy AoE damage. I gave up on that plan after not finding any tutorials and accepting that it probably wouldn't even work the way I wanted it to. Out of every battle in this playthrough, this is the only one that I couldn't find any strategies for that would allow me to win in less than 2 hits. The worst part of it all was the fact that there actually is a way, theoretically, to do this fight in one attack. I found multiple YouTube clips of people fighting the gargoyles in which the second one spawns incorrectly and gets stuck on the bell tower, and even a couple where this causes it to fall to its death. It even happens in both versions of the game. The only issue is that I have no idea how to recreate this. I couldn't even find any documentation explaining this glitch, just clips of it happening. I noticed that all the evidence I've seen has at least one summoned player, so my only guess would be that this glitch has to do with the online connection, like maybe the gargoyle spawns in earlier for a certain player due to latency, and it misses its jumping down animation. I honestly have no idea, and while it's not really a question that matters, I'm still super curious about it. I decided I didn't want to try recreating this because I felt like bringing multiplayer into this run kinda messes up the challenge and might not even work in the end. One thing you have to understand about glitches is that they aren't always well documented, even for really popular games like Dark Souls. The exploits that get the most attention are naturally things like soul duping or boss skips, because they're broadly useful for things like speedrunning. Everyone knows you can skip through Sen's Gate because that's a really useful thing to be able to do. When it comes to something like skipping the gargoyles, a very easy boss that can be killed in seconds, not many people are going to care to look for glitches. Unfortunate for bullshit challenge runners like myself, but expected. Ultimately, my strategy remained painfully simple, so I decided to at least make it look cool. I dropped my death counter because it was cluttering up the screen and prepared to fight. Five-ish doused herself in power and stepped into the arena. The first gargoyle came out swinging, quickly knocking our heroine to the floor. She reminded her foe that she's not just a pretty face by blasting it in midair with a great heavy soul arrow, knocking off nearly 2/3 of its health. The reinforcements arrived and Five-ish danced among their paltry flames, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As both gargoyles launched their attacks in unison, she deftly slipped between them and erupted, killing them both with a single chaos storm, ensuring that they'd be roommates in the burning pits of hell. As much as I would have liked to one-shot these guys, ringing both Bells of Awakening with only 2 attacks on the board is pretty good if you ask me. I watched the gate opening cutscene for probably the 2nd time ever, dark signed away, and took off to Sen's Fortress. Not much to say here since I was able to sprint through this area pretty much like normal. With how overleveled I was, even running face first into a boulder barely dented Five-ish's delicate head. Now's probably a good time to mention that the superfluous leveling isn't really necessary to pull this run off. The only stats you really need to do everything I'm doing are 19 attunement for 5 spell slots, 15 intelligence to cast fall control, and 12 faith for a little trick later in the run. Dexterity also plays a role in this because it slightly affects casting speed, but the levels in vitality and endurance were just to make my life easier. I hope that doesn't invalidate this run in your eyes. Like I said in the beginning, it's more about seeing what's possible than playing the game normally. You would still need to dupe a ton of souls anyway, since you're not going to be getting any from fighting, and it costs over 300k to max out your pyro flame alone. Anyway, after a couple of close calls with a pendulum, I made it to the top of the fortress. I borrowed a Balder Knight to chip me down to red Tearstone range, used Power Within to make up the difference, and began the fight with the Iron Golem. I took care to position myself so that my Chaos Storm would knock him over the edge, but I ended up doing so much damage that he just died on the spot. Five-ish is an empath, so she died too. And with 3 attacks, we're off to Anorlando. Again, I chose to watch the cutscene, and it's kind of funny just how close the Golden City of Gods is to the the rest of Lordran. Like, it feels so cut off from the rest of the world when you get there, but it's just like behind a wall. I was met with some minor resistance from the Painting Guardians, but otherwise just speedran through this area, since there's not much else I can really do in a run where fighting is all but banned. I'll take this time to talk a bit about the next boss fight. Ornstein and Smough are a two-phase double fight, which you'd think would mean they can't be one-shot, but you'd be wrong, dummy. While you do fight the bear and the twink simultaneously, killing either one causes the other to power up and enter phase 2, and you can't kill them both at once. However, there is a glitch with phase 2 Ornstein that can cause him to fall out of bounds and die without being attacked. So that's the plan. Oko Smough with a souped up Chaos Storm, then drive Ornstein to suicide for the one attack win. Vastly easier said than done, but that's the idea. I grabbed Havel the Rock Johnson's gear, approached the fog gate to my next opponents, and made a backup save in preparation. Out of curiosity, I decided to clip through the fog wall using the same glitch I used in the Asylum. Not only did this get me into the arena, but it also prevented the fight from starting normally. My primary target was just waiting there, defenseless, frozen in oblivious apathy. So I shoved my head up his ass, waited for Power Within to activate my red Tearstone ring, and set off the nuke. He died, and Ornstein didn't spawn. I quit out and started the fight properly since I realized Ornstein only shows up if you watch his epic intro, then tried it again. This time they were both waiting for me, so I assumed I'd figured it out, but once again, I killed Smough and Ornstein was nowhere to be seen. It turns out this is actually a well-known glitch, although it's usually performed with a backstab to get through the fog wall. And it does allow you to skip the first phase by killing an inactive boss, but only if you kill Ornstein first. Because, of course, when I find the perfect glitch to make this run a little bit more bearable, it just so happens to only work if you're not trying to do the exact thing that I'm going for. Sadly, this meant that I was going to have to win this fight the old-fashioned way. And my god, was it annoying. All I had to do to win this fight was hit a Chaos Storm on Smough, then glitch Ornstein out of the arena. But there were so many things that could and did go wrong. First off, I was entering the fight at just 20% health for that redstone damage, with Power Within further draining my health because I wanted to ensure that I was doing max damage for my single attack. But with these two tweakers on my ass the whole time, especially Ornstein, it was very easy to get killed even with all my defense. Second, despite his gargantuan girth, Smough is actually quite a nimble fellow and often had time to hop out of the way of my Chaos Storms since they take so long to cast. Third, Ornstein tends to be the much more aggressive one since he moves so quickly, which resulted in numerous failed attempts due to me accidentally killing him with my pyromancy instead of his husband. Finally, even on attempts where I incinerated Smough and lived to see phase 2, I was not out of the woods. See, the health drain caused by Power Within is proportional to your vitality, doing 1% of your max HP every second for 100 seconds. With my vitality being so high and my Estus flask barely reinforced, it was hurting 5ish really badly, all while struggling to find a safe place to heal, what with Ornstein shooting ropes and flying all over the room. As for the glitch kill, it's also easier said than done. Even without the aforementioned stressors, you have to get him to a specific spot in the arena, wait for him to initiate a grab attack, and then get into position right before he does it. I don't think you can bait him into doing this one specific attack either, so it's highly luck dependent. All in all, a very frustrating endeavor. After several murders and a quick suicide, I cooked up an extra 5 flasks at the bonfire, put on as much of Havel's armor as I could wear while still mid-rolling, and went back for a rematch. I discovered that Power Within on its own was enough of a damage boost to one-shot Smough, so thankfully I didn't need to drop my health to that of a car crash victim to take him out. That, along with twice as many heals as I had before, made it much easier to survive the initial gangbang and stave off the self-imposed health drain. Ornstein was still doing pretty huge damage to me, and I had to tank quite a few impalings, but before long I had him right where I wanted him. As soon as I saw him get ready to grab me again, I dove between his legs and led him right into my trap. 5ish got a brief breath of fresh air as Ornstein shoved her through a window, but then she was back inside, and he was not. I waited with anticipation, worried I'd somehow screwed up, but eventually Ornstein died of old age, and we take those in this house. Yes!
What'd you do?
I did the really hard thing that I couldn't do
Let's go.
in like 2 tries. Yes! I didn't want to pop off too hard and scare you.
You could pop off too hard and scare me.
Let's fucking go! With a mere 4 attacks to my name, I bowed my head to the Holy Giantess and received the Lord Vessel. In a typical run, this would be more or less the halfway point of the game, but we're actually only 1 boss away from total victory. It was finally time to put those 12 points of faith to use. It was time to wrong warp. This particular trick has always been cruel to me. Years ago, when I used to casually speedrun this game, the best time I ever got was just around 48 minutes, and even though I fucked up constantly in that run, it was the only time I ever got this warp on the first try. So I just accepted it and gave up on going for that world record. It has become a lot more accessible now than it was back then, but it's really not any easier to actually pull off. The wrong warp revolves around a glitch called Spell Swap, which allows you to cast one spell while performing the animation for another spell. Doesn't sound that crazy, but it can cause some pretty insane shit. In this instance, we're going to be casting Homeward with the animation from Force. In order to do this, you have to have both spells lined up back to back and a talisman in each hand. You then have to cast with your left hand and swap the spell simultaneously, then cast with your right hand exactly 1 frame later. Even if you know what you're doing, I probably don't need to explain why it's difficult to make 2 inputs within 1/60th of a second of each other. But that's just the spell swap. In order to warp into the Kiln of the First Flame, you have to rest at the Lord Vessel, warp to Undead Parish, jump up onto this banister, and nudge yourself as close to the edge as possible without falling off. If you can manage to do the spell swap here, your character falls off the railing and interrupts the animation. Walk to the bonfire and sit down before the screen fades to black, and when you wake up, you're in the Kiln. This was mind-breaking. Even getting up on that banister is deceptively difficult, so I decided to practice the input until I felt like I had it down. At my best, I reckon I had a maybe 35% success rate, which seemed good enough, but of course, every time I actually tried it on the railing, I beefed it. I kept repeating a cycle of trying the warp, getting mad and practicing the spell swap input, getting the input easily, then failing the warp some more. Interestingly, the YouTube tutorial I followed explained that female characters can't perform the wrong warp normally, which I have to assume is false because I kept getting the input, but it recommended toggling the right hand before spell swapping, so I started doing that out of pure superstition. And after about 1 full hour of constant attempts, I was in. I've never made a backup save more quickly in my life. I let these black guys manhandle me a little bit on my way to Gwyn's house, then used Power Within to drop my health to Red Ring range. One last battle, one last attack. Gwyn leapt towards Five-ish with all the ferocity of a cracked-out mountain lion, but she effortlessly parried the blow. She slipped out of his sight as he recovered, and before he could swing his sword again, the Chaos Storm swallowed him whole. In a matter of seconds, she destroyed the Lord of Cinder with the very flames he discovered all those years ago. Five-ish tragically succumbed to her injuries right after, which scared the shit out of me, but thankfully she got right back up in the exact same spot. With that, I had beaten the entire game of Dark Souls Remastered, all by myself, with only 5 attacks.
Oh, that's why she's called Five-ish. Oh, I get it now.
Sadly, all great tales must one day come to an end, and I was tasked with deciding how hers would go. Once again, we must ask, why did Five-ish do all of this? I won't lie, it was difficult to come up with her lore. At first, I thought of her as just being built different, a chosen undead to dethrone all others, so knowledgeable of her surroundings and the intricacies of this magical world, she was able to complete her quest in the most efficient way possible, with pure intuition and skill. But honestly, her actions weren't very efficient at all. Fumbling through the back rooms of Blighttown and spending so much time trying to get Taurus Demon and Ornstein to off themselves was certainly more difficult than the standard approach, and all in all, it took me over 10 times longer than the world record speedrun. I then started to consider the opposite side of this coin, that her aim wasn't efficiency, but effortlessness. Not caring to raise a finger against any enemy that wasn't worth her time, and ending every fight with as little combat as possible. While I do like the idea of a character whose laziness resulted in her transformation into a demigod, it still didn't really fit for the same reasons I just mentioned. I was gonna have to get pretty metaphorical to square the fact that Five-ish glitched and exploited her way through her entire hero's journey, and then it hit me. Maybe Five-ish wasn't really a person at all, but a force. A physical manifestation of unrelenting entropy. The dialectic. The decay. The world of Lordran is a world in decline. All around are crumbling monuments and blood-spattered ramparts, inhospitable and hazardous. The only ones who exist within it, when not mindlessly hostile, are men and women on the brink of mental collapse, and guardians who have yet to realize that there is nothing left to be protected. Whether the chosen undead acts as peacefully as possible or tears into every living thing they see, in the end, the flame will die out. In a way, it already has. From the very beginning, Five-ish shows herself to be something more than another undead warrior. She rejects the very first challenge presented to her. Rather than cut down the meek hollows in the Asylum and vanquish the beast that keeps them there, she just leaves. She flatly ignores the first keeper of the Bell of Awakening, and didn't even do anything to Taurus or Ornstein. They fell to their own hubris. As for those who she was forced to destroy, well, they would have expired eventually, right? She was just accelerating the process. Death comes for us all, and it comes as it pleases. Statues crumble, machines break down, legends are forgotten, and humans pass away. But in that same vein, death gives way to new life. Five-ish is not just an avatar of destruction, she is the passage of time, the cycle of life. There's a chance that she planned to let the flame die out after killing Gwyn, to break the cycle of fire and plunge the world into a new era of dark. But when she died, right after their fight, only to wake up in the same place moments later, she understood. She too was trapped in the cycle. She was the cycle. And so, it only seemed fair that she play her role in it. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the first video I've made where I didn't stream the progress because I honestly just thought it would be really boring to watch, but I do kind of regret that and hope to get back into live streaming soon. If you liked the video, feel free to leave a comment and subscribe if you'd like to see more. And if you didn't like the video or noticed any mistakes I made, well, I'm sure you've already left a comment letting me know. Special thanks to SN Menji for the thumbnail and channel art. His Twitter is linked in the description. I'm Yuzbektasaur, but you can call me Becky. I'll see you next time.